All right, so get into the first question that our subscribers had. It says, how should a man be taught about a woman's body sexually? Because a lot of times, men learn through trial and error, or they learn through, watching videos online.
Mm-hmm.
So how should a man learn a woman's body?
Well, I think it should start way before we start putting on like heteronormative, a man should know this about our body.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should each know about our bodies before we start learning about whoever's, whether it's a man, a woman, or somewhere in between.
Gotcha.
So I think sex education is like the cornerstone of where our understanding of sexuality begins prior to the act of. Like, think about it. Do you remember your sex ed growing up?
Never had it. I can't recall it.
I had it.
I had it, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was only in high school, like what, 10th, 11th grade or something.
And it was like one session where they were like,
here's
put on a condom. That's
right.
It.
Here's some pictures of blue waffle, which is actually not a thing, or like, here's pictures of what
blue waffle. What do you mean? I ain't get.
You've never heard of that?
Nah.
You never heard people be like, oh, you see the blue waffle? Like,
nah.
So the story goes, it's like a woman, third world country, I think Africa, and it looks like a very swollen, kind of disfigured labia or vulva area, and it's blue. And everybody was like, blue waffle, not a thing, right? It's actually like a type of medication they can use for like a yeast infection. And here in the United States, we have access to everything super, super simple. But this was, I think, in somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, where it was a much more like not as medically advanced.
Yeah.
So the medication actually can kind of stain the skin blue. So that's where that myth comes from. But that in itself, like these myths, we saw pictures of mangled genitalia and said, this is what happens if you have sex. We were told not to get pregnant and don't get HIV. But there was no conversation around pleasure.
Right.
Definitely wasn't. Yeah, that was left out. Like all I got was the banana, the condom on the banana, HIV, talking about HIV and AIDS, and maybe some other STDs or STIs. I don't know what they refer to it now as, but that was the bare minimum, pretty much. Like so.
Right. Even today, I think it's somewhere around 38 states, and the District of Columbia requires some type of sex ed, but not all sex ed is the same. Okay. Some places are teaching like an abstinence only sex ed, where young people will go to schools and they'll say, chew up this gum, spit it in a cup. That's what you are if you have sex before marriage. Right. So again, we're not getting to pleasure.
Right.
Nobody's given the opportunity to understand how to identify what we want as pleasure, what our partners may want as pleasure, or even how to communicate around pleasure and consent, so I think to answer your question, where should men learn? Men, women, and all people should learn in sex ed classes taught by a professional in school from, I'm all for the European and Denmark model, from kindergarten to 12th grade. Now, before you start being like, whoa, I saw your face.
Yeah.
I saw your face.
I'm scared to talk to my kid about like maybe that deep in it, like, how you should be pleasure. I don't know, maybe I think I can speak to my sons about it, but not my daughter. Like, yo, you gotta let him take you down, like, or whatever they be saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you bring
you
that
ain't
up?
gonna say it like that.
Nah, I'm saying like, it's very awkward, I think, for me to, I think that's her mother's job. I don't know if that can be my job, per se.
Actually, if your daughter is heteronormative,
Yeah.
who will she be having sex with? Men, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be more affirming if as a man, you were like, listen, I want you to experience pleasure. And if a man is not doing it for you, and you can't just say, dick you down, because what the fuck does that mean? Like, what you was trying to do? Beat it up?
Oh, man.
Okay?
You know what I mean?
But I think this is a good example of like, it should be fathers, and not in a gross way, but telling their daughters, like, I love you. You're my seed.
True.
I don't want a man to disrespect you.
Understandable about that part, yeah.
I don't want a man to just look at you as a sex object for his pleasure. If you're not getting pleasure, that man doesn't deserve you. And I think that's a powerful thing, but I also think it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not about in kindergarten or first grade or second grade, you're teaching about sex or the act of, you're teaching about body parts. Because if you can name your body parts, you can, be able to say, don't touch me there.
Right.
True.
Or you can, throughout your life, because, young children touch themselves. They gyrate on things. You have kids. They rub up against stuff.
Right.
They don't know that as masturbation for sexual pleasure. They just know sensory-wise, it feels good to touch.
True. True.
So as parents, as guardians, as adults, caregivers, we kind of need to be able to have an open conversation, whether it's with a girl or a boy.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for us to maintain equity in those conversations. Like as much as you would tell your sons, yo, women are not just sex toys. We should be telling our daughters, men are not just sex toys.
True.
Because I get in trouble for this when I say shit like this, but in our community and communities of color, Black communities, we have historically been hyper sexualized through the systems of white suppression and white dominance. So in a lot of ways, I think it's time for us to start peeling back more layers around that, which